I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us once again, one of the many favorites we have on. He's from Canada. He's Rob Kirby of Kirby-Analytics.com. Rob Kirby, thank you for joining us today on USA Watchdog.
Pleasure to be with you, Greg.
You know, Rob, you at Kirby Analytics give out tailored analysis to companies. You also help in the procurement of large quantities of gold, from ounces all the way up to tonnage, although I know tons are hard to get these days. But you do work with big players getting big amounts of gold for people. You know a lot about the gold market, and a lot's going on in the gold market right now. I'm not really a gold site, but I think this is a big story right now with all the repatriations and all the clamoring and buying of gold and all the reports of Dutch gold and the leading French candidate wanting to repatriate gold and the Swiss gold vote and all this clamoring and all this gold buying going on, and then the prices in sub 1200s or something like that. What's going on if the price of gold here in America? You said it would go way up, a few months ago, and at least on the surface here it hasn't, but behind the scenes in our pre-interview you said, oh yeah, it's gone way up. Explain.
Okay. What I was referencing, Greg, when I said that the price has actually gone up, I'm referencing the trade in, let's just say, institutional amounts or large amounts of bullion in the Asian market. The pricing mechanism in the Asian market has completely and utterly divorced itself from the fraudulent paper prices that are being reflected in the exchanges in the Western world. And by that I mean, let's just say in the Asian market, if you were to try and transact, say, 5 tons of bullion, and if you knew who to call, let's just say that if you could find 5 tons of bullion, physical bullion, in the Asian marketplace, and if you could find it as cheap as spot plus 50%, you'd be doing really, really, really well. Because I'm gonna recommend you could probably do better than that. So prices being paid for physical metal in Asia right now make a mockery of what prices are being shown in both the COMEX and the LBMA and these paper markets, which have divorced themselves from the realities and the laws of economics. And it's the paper gold price and the paper silver price which has utterly stood economics on its ears, because rudimentary economics tells you that as demand increases, price is supposed to increase because simple supply and demand dictate this. But the precious metals market is the only market in the world, in the Western world that is, where increased demand means a lower price, if you want to believe that. So we're all being treated to a colossal fraud. And the people that are perpetrating this fraud are the controllers of the Western financial system and the people behind U.S. dollar hegemony. And these people are pulling a massive, massive, massive fraud on humanity, and it's not sustainable, and it will ultimately break down.
You're talking 50% over spot. You're talking $1,800, $2,000 gold right now as we speak over in Asia, a minimum.
And I'm saying, Greg, you'd be hard pressed to find it at that level.
At $1,800 to $2,000.
Yes, Greg. For serious tonnage, you'd be hard pressed to find it.
Wow.
That is in the Asian market. And you know what, Greg? There will come a point in my personal belief, there will come a point when a lot of the Western-based mining companies are going to refuse to do transact the metal, their offtake from their mining operations at these fraudulent prices being reflected through the paper markets in the Western markets.
Well, speaking of demand, and I just want to hit this real quick, in silver, I mean, the sales of Silver Eagles are just about at all-time highs. We're just about at a record. I don't know if they're going to allow the record to go through or whatever, but sales of Silver Eagles are through the roof. What about Silver Eagles, the Maple Leaf the Maple Leaf silver coins in Canada? Are they plentiful or are they tight?
They've been extremely tight, and the supplier of silver maples in Canada is the Royal Canadian Mint, and there have absolutely been bottlenecks with the mint not being able to supply its dealer network with the amount of silver maples being demanded from the dealer network for silver maples. And there have been orders. There have been orders in the dealer market that haven't been filled because of lack of supply, because the Royal Canadian Mint cannot satisfy the demand for silver maples. Period.
So this is a screaming buy down here, is what you're saying, and it's what's the end game by the people suppressing the price? Don't they realize at some point this is like holding a ball underwater, and it gets loose and pops out to the shoots to the surface and goes up? I mean, what's their game? Why are they doing this? Don't they know what we know?
You know what, Greg? The mantra of the people that run the Western financial system, I think, can be best summed up by a famous quote by none other than Robert Rubin, former Treasury Secretary of the United States, when he wrote his memoirs in his book, which was dated in the early 2000s. And in his book, he was referencing the financial crisis of the late 90s, and he made a statement to the effect that sometimes the financial apparatus, the financial elites, can make very, very, very expensive bad decisions. And these expensive bad decisions can be justified if they prevent the collapse for 6 months or so. So what he was I'm paraphrasing what he said. You can actually go and look at the quote in the book. I believe it's on page 283 of his book. And because I've written about this and referenced it in past articles that I've written, what this alludes to is that the financial elites will go to any length to kick the can down the road a few more feet and to buy themselves some time. And what we're seeing, in my view, is a colossal exercise in the financial elites trying to buy a little more time. So, and what flows from that is the fraud that we're being treated to right now on an absolutely massive scale.
So what are they doing with their time? So if they're buying time, then they need to do something with that time. What are they doing with their time? How are they preparing for what's coming down?
Well, I think principally they've been engaged in trying to weaken who the nations that they view as their primary competition, and the people who are sick and tired of the games that are being played and the U.S. dollar hegemony, namely Russia and China. I mean, it seems to me that most of the actions centered on the Anglo-American banking complex, specifically with the American financial elites, seem to be doing everything in their power to demonize Russia and or to point fingers at China. And these are the people that have basically had it up to the ears with dollar hegemony. These are the people that realize how crooked and corrupt the dollar-centric system is. And these are the people that are trying to affect the change. And therefore, buying time, trying to demonize their opponents or the people that know that the fraud's being committed. This is where all the energies are being spent, at least in my view. And I believe that there's ample evidence to suggest this is exactly what's going on. But, it goes right back to what Rubin said in his autobiography. These guys are doing anything they can to buy themselves a few more days or a few more weeks, and but the conclusion or the outcome, in my view, is absolutely and utterly guaranteed, and it's one that won't be favorable for the dollar-centric system.
When you say it won't be favorable for the dollar-centric system, what does it look like here? What is the peril that people here face? I mean, I just had Thanksgiving with my family. They don't even talk about what I do. I know they won't see this interview. But they just, everybody is just, don't talk to, I don't want to know, or nothing ever bad can happen. If nothing's bad's going to happen, you're cuckoo, you have a tinfoil hat. It's crazy. And what's it going to look like to the person on the street when this thing, when the price that you're talking about is being traded for overseas, and you're saying at least $600 over spot right now? Am I getting that right?
Yep.
At least $600 over spot right now. At least a minimum of $600 over spot, which puts gold at around 1,800 or so. And you're saying that the paper price has to at some point catch up with the real price overseas, the physical price that people are paying for tonnage. What is it going to look like here to America?
Well, you know what, Greg? Fundamentally, I believe that we're going to ultimately have to see our paper prices reflect more of the reality of what's going on in the physical markets overseas. But, unfortunately, the people that are in control of the Western financial system are such sociopaths and are so wrapped up in their fraud. My concern really is whether they maybe take us to complete war, whether we're going to see a nuclear war, whether they're going to flip all the tables over, because you see the criminality that exists in our current financial system, Greg, is so utterly egregious that for the people that are invested, fully invested in it, for them to now stand up and admit what they've done and admit the degree of blatant, mass financial fraud that's been inflicted on humanity. It's not something they can very easily just stand up and say, all right, you got me. It's sort of like standing up and saying, all right, I murdered 3,000 people. Like, what are you going to do? These guys are all in, and that's what it comes down to. They're all in. So, and they're totally committed. It's a very, very dangerous situation, Greg.
And to back you up on that, I mean, the reported fines for Forex rigging, now gold rigging, they've had fines for that. We've had fines for mortgage-backed securities, for that kind of rigging. We've had rigging in LIBOR. We've had rigging everywhere.
But Greg, I have to interject for just a minute. There's a lot of ninnies in the world who claim that anybody who espouses that there's rigging in the gold price is a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist.
They just pay fines.
Yet we have banks that have been charged and fined for rigging the foreign exchange markets.
Yes.
All over the place. Well, you know what? To all those naysayers out there, I'm going to remind them that it was back a number of years ago, the Royal Bank of Canada chairman stood up at a speech at a luncheon, and he declared that the Royal Bank of Canada trades their gold off their foreign exchange desk because they consider it a currency. So you can't have it both ways. You can't have it that banks are being charged for fraud in the foreign exchange markets all over the place, and then say that it doesn't extend to gold, because gold is a foreign currency. It's a foreign currency that basically is international. It's a foreign currency that has no counterparty risk, and banks trade it and treat it as a foreign currency. And we know that banks are guilty because they've paid the fines for doing it. We know that banks are guilty of rigging foreign currency markets. So, by extension, if banks are rigging foreign currency markets, banks are rigging gold, because gold is a foreign currency.
Some people think that gold is on the periphery, but really, I'm looking at it more, especially with the news in the last, few months, that gold looks like it's at the center. That everybody has gold as its centerpiece. China, Russia, the Dutch, now the leading French candidate, who's probably going to knock Hollande out of the box, the current French president, in the next election, Germany. Everybody is clamoring for the Swiss, and they're big gold people in general. It seems like gold is at the center of the hurricane.
Well, I would 100% agree with your observation, Greg. And it's the global central banking community that is so fully invested in the fiat money regimes who would like us to believe otherwise. And they do everything in their power to have us believe otherwise. And, I can actually recount a tale to you, which I don't know if I've ever shared this thought with you before, Greg, but this goes back to like 2003 or 2004. And this is when gold was trying to struggle and get above $300 an ounce. And back in that time frame, my brother and I were playing golf one day at a suburban Toronto golf course, and we happened to get matched up on the golf course with a retired former chairman of a Swiss banking institution. And, as we moved along in our round of golf, talk turned to the markets, and he asked us what we thought would be a great asset going forward, or where a smart place to put money. My brother and I both hands down said that the place we'd like to be invested is in the gold market. And it was at that point when this retired chairman of a former chairman of a Swiss banking institution in Canada, he spoke up to us and he said, if you guys had any idea how much effort and how much resources have been put into discrediting gold by the central banking community around the world, I don't think you would be nearly as bullish as you are right now. So, and as it turns out, we were both right.
Oh,
because,
yeah.
As it turns out, gold has done a lot better than it was then. Because look what it's done from 300 or under 300 an ounce back then. And, it's been up to 1900. It's been bashed back down to under 1200. But he was right when he said, you have no idea about the resources that have been pitted against gold and to make gold look like a poor alternative to central bankers' pet fiat currencies. So, we were both right, but there you go. There's a first-hand account of a guy that was inside the system and was part of the system.
When is the paper price? So people watching this interview are saying, let's go back to it's plus at least $600 an ounce above spot overseas for bars and millions of ounces, tons, whatever. When does the paper price over here, the around 1,200, high 11s, whatever it is here, when does the paper price reflect what's happening overseas? How does that change happen? Do they just run out of gold? Does somebody step in, as Bill Holter and I were talking about at Miles Franklin, and saying, hey, for $2 billion, you can buy all the registered gold and all the registered silver for $2 billion at COMEX. Does that happen? How do we get to the paper price reflecting the reality of the real physical world overseas?
Well, Greg, when you talk about COMEX and their reported inventories, my personal view about COMEX inventories and what they're reported, I believe that they're illusory, and I feel that they're basically a mirage, because I don't feel that those inventories are really for sale at any price. So, to say at what price, or can somebody come in and buy all the gold that COMEX has? No, I don't believe they can, because you can't buy something that's not for sale. It's sort of like having a discussion about how much it would cost to buy Buckingham Palace. You can't buy Buckingham Palace because it's not for sale. It's where the Queen lives. And it's not going to be for sale even if you have a mint full of fiat dollars, because the Queen isn't moving anytime soon.
And how does the paper price catch up with the price overseas? What happens? What facilitates that? Do the players themselves, the powers themselves, say, I think because somebody's buying all this gold. I know it's not just Russia and China. Who knows who is all buying all this gold? Do the players at some point say, I think we've got all the gold we can get? At one point you said, this ends when China can't get their gold. You said that about, 6-8 months ago. This ends, is China at a point where they're not going to get any more gold?
I think China's probably fast approaching a point where it's going to become harder and harder and harder for them to obtain physical metal. And the reason for that is because more and more and more countries and entities realize that the game being perpetrated by the Western central banks is a fraud, and that it's not real, and that it's not sustainable. And this is why you're seeing increasing. It was none other than, I believe, Mario Draghi that even put on the table, I believe, in the last couple of weeks, the notion that the ECB could start buying gold themselves, because and of course he cloaked that by saying it would result from their want to have inflation, because he's claiming that the demon right now is deflation, and his statement was that if they wanted to create inflation, they might even resort to buying gold. Well, I'll tell you something. If the ECB starts buying gold, and then maybe if the German Bundesbank starts buying gold, and I'm not saying they're going to, but maybe they will. Maybe if it's only just to try and buy the gold back that they left in safekeeping with America, that America refuses to repatriate or give back to them after giving them a middle finger salute by sending 120 tons to the Dutch on the back of Germany, asking for 300 tons of their gold back, and they were told niet. So you never know. You just never know. Somewhere along the line, Greg, we're going to get to a point where somebody's going to put the straw on the back of the camel, and one of these days, one of these straws will be the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. So, and when that occurs, I think we could see a very, very, very fast ramp up in the paper price of precious metal.
Citi's Dutch strategist, I don't know if you saw this or not, he said gold was in a 6,000-year bubble. This is the Dutch who just got back 122 tons. The article, aptly said you might want to give that theory to the Dutch who just got 122 tons of their gold back, which basically refutes everything you just said.
Well,
I mean, is gold in a 6,000-year bubble?
Well, if gold was really in a 6,000-year bubble, why did the Dutch ask for their gold back? And if the Dutch really believe gold is in a 6,000-year bubble, they should maybe give their friends in Germany a call and ask them if they'd be interested in relieving the overpriced gold from them. Better yet, they should phone the Chinese and ask the Chinese if they might want to throw a bid in for their 120 tons.
Well, just to get to the end here, with all this buying of gold and repatriation and talk of repatriation and the Swiss gold vote, which I want to briefly get on that because you have a theory about that, which doesn't matter. What do you think about what does this say about all this talk and all this buying of gold? What does it say about the financial system? What are they seeing that we're not, that the Western media is not?
Well, what the Western world is trying to hide from the rest of the world is that the U.S. dollar centric fiat money system is failing, and it's failing in spades, and it's failing, and the only reason it hasn't failed yet is because extraordinary levels of corruption and fraud have been used and employed to keep kicking the can down the road, and to keep obfuscating and hiding from the general public, how broken the system really is, and that's been done through basically payoffs, bribes, and ownership of the media, payoffs, bribes, and ownership of the political apparatus, payoffs, ownerships, and bribes of the biggest financial institutions, and it has shown itself to be a very, very, very robust means to give things the appearance of being under control, but beneath the surface, things really aren't under control, and beneath the surface, we're seeing increasing amounts of the world negotiate bilateral currency arrangements, China with just about everybody who they trade with. And, if people really, or if the world really felt as ill about gold as Western central bankers or the Western financial edifice would like us to believe, why are so many nations abandoning the dollar in trade? Because this is contrary and exactly opposite to what you'd expect if people really believed what was going on in the paper gold market.
Are people?
They don't compute, Greg.
Are central bankers? Are we seeing the starting to see the overt signs of a panic into the gold market? Is that what
I
you're
believe
saying?
I believe we are, Greg. I believe we are, and I believe if we actually see some justice served out of this, there's going to be a gaggle of central bankers, maybe rounded up and put on show trials in front of the world court in The Hague. This ultimately is where this should go, whether it's allowed to go there or not, or whether they decide to flip the tables over and say screw humanity in the end and take us to a nuclear war. These people are that sociopathic that they might do that, Greg. I put nothing past them. Understand, these people have been ruling the world, Greg, for like the last 100 years or longer, and they're very reluctant to give it up, especially when you've gone to the criminal lengths that these people have gone to perpetuate this control.
And
like I say.
And you're saying that this is a sign, all this repatriation and buying and all this talk. I mean, now countries are actively asking for and getting their gold back. Well, that doesn't. What does that say to the financial?
Greg, what does it say? These countries, and now you hear the French saying that one of the next leaders in France saying that the French want to repatriate theirs. I mean, they're all screaming at us that gold is money. They're all screaming at us that they don't trust the dollar. And I mean, you can try and phrase it any way you want, but that's what they're saying. By saying they want to repatriate their gold, they're saying they don't trust America and they don't trust the dollar. Period. And saying it any other way, is a lie. It's not accurate. It's a lie. But you see, lies are what we've come to expect from central bankers, because that's their hallmark. Just like your hallmark, Greg, is that you do real investigative journalism, and that's why you were kicked out of CNN, because you wanted to do real reporting and report the truth. But your masters at CNN, they didn't want the truth. And our central bankers, Greg, they don't want the truth either.
Yeah.
You know why? Because they're living a very, very, very privileged existence by being the head of this colossal fraud. So there you go. And that's what it's all about. But you know what? This is what humanity's all about. This has been going on since the beginning of time. And is it really all that strange that it's going on today? I'd say not at all.
The Swiss gold vote coming up. Do you think that if it was fairly done, I can't see how the whole country wouldn't vote. Yeah, we want our gold back. We want the Swiss franc back by gold. But the Swiss gold vote, what do you think? What impact does it have? Yes or yes about the referendum to repatriate their gold, or no repatriation of gold? Whether it's voted yes or no, what do you think the outcome's going to be?
What do I think? I wouldn't put much stock in there being a fair counting of the votes to begin with, because in my view, this is all going to be orchestrated or overseen by effectively the monetary elites. And I don't think these guys don't count. These guys don't count fairly, Greg. These are the guys that have been telling us for years that inflation's under 2%. These are the guys that have been telling us that unemployment rate in the United States is 6.8%, except if you count unemployment the same way it was counted in 1980, it's really 22%. Yeah. So I don't expect honest counting from them, or an honest accounting or an honest tally of the votes. And, in theory, if we had free votes and free markets, and if things were done above board, does it have the ability to create a stir or a ripple in the gold market? Yeah, it does. And the reason why is because currently Switzerland is required to hold 7% of the reserves in bullion, which with their current bullion holdings, they cover the reserves with the 7%. But what the referendum is all about is increasing the amount of their reserves that have to be held in gold up to 20%. And that would mean effectively that Switzerland would have to acquire maybe up to 3 times the bullion that they currently hold, which could create an instant demand for around 1,500 tons of physical bullion in the global marketplace. And, and that kind of demand could really stir the market, but there again, when you've got a bunch of committed sociopaths who are doing the accounting and with the lack of transparency in sovereign entities, actual gold holdings, because you see, understand, central banks around the world, when they count their gold, they count leased gold that has physically left their vaults and been replaced with an IOU. They count that the same in their bookkeeping as bricks that are in the vault. So you see, how can you say I own 1,000 tons of gold, but 950 tons of it I've leased out and it's gone, and I really only have 50 tons. Central banks do this as a matter of practice. This is the way they keep their books. If you and I kept our books this way, Greg, and got audited by anyone like the IRS, which coincidentally is a creation of central banking, they'd throw us in jail, and they would have us disgorge all of our assets because they'd say we were running a fraud. Yet when they do this, we're all supposed to think that's okay. Well, you know what, Greg? Maybe in their world it's okay, but in my world and in the real world, it's not okay. Fraud is fraud, no matter where it's committed. Period.
You think 2015 will be a watershed year for gold?
Well, you know what, Greg? Maybe 2014 still ends up being a watershed year for gold. But let's put it this way. Things aren't really going the central bankers' way right now. And like I say, if things continue on the current trajectory, the central bankers are going to have an increasingly difficult time making even the sleepiest of sheep believe in the system and in the viability of fiat money.
Rob Kirby, Kirby Analytics. Rob Kirby, thank you for joining us today on USA Watchdog. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Greg.
And one last thing before we go. I mean, there's a lot of free stuff on, I'm going to say this after the interview, articles you write, because you say, hey, I write articles. You do, and they're free on your site, correct?
Yeah, there's an awful lot of material that I have written, Greg, over the years. I don't know. I think I have at least 800 or 850 articles in the public domain. And, I've covered my areas of expertise and interest are interest rates, precious metals, and quite a bit on the energy complex as well.
And you also have a subscription service, too, as well.
Yep.
And if you are kind enough to send me a link, I will put that down there for people to take a look at. How much is it per year, per 6 months, whatever?
It's $145 a year.
Okay.
And I communicate with my subscribers, Greg, by direct email.
Yes, and I get nothing for this. You have paid me nothing. It's at all, just so to let people know. I have been getting zero money for putting this link up. It's between you and them, and I get no cut, and I get nothing. And that's the way it should be. Anyway, I just want to say thank you again for being on USAWatchdog.com.
My pleasure, Greg.